The air in the living room was heavy with unspoken tension, the kind that seeps into your bones and makes every word feel like a loaded bullet. Cassid sat quietly on the worn-out couch, fingers tapping against the armrest, trying to ignore the sharp words slicing through the air like daggers. "You really just sit around all day doing nothing, huh?" Lisa, his sister-in-law, scoffed, crossing her arms as she stood near the kitchen counter. Her voice carried that signature arrogance, the kind that made Cassid's skin prickle. "Honestly, I don't know how my sister puts up with you. A man without a job is just useless." Cassid clenched his jaw, inhaling deeply to keep his composure. He had always been a patient man, but Lisa had a way of pressing all the wrong buttons. She had never respected him, not since the day he married her sister, Emily. To her, he was a failure, a burden who leached off his wife's success while contributing nothing. What Lisa didn't know was that Cassid wasn't jobless at all. In fact, he was more successful than she could ever imagine. He owned a thriving company, one that had built its reputation from the ground up, and as fate would have it, Lisa had just applied for a position there. But he wasn't about to correct her. Not yet. Instead, he chuckled lightly, shaking his head. "You're right, Lisa. Maybe I should take some advice from you." His words dripped with sarcasm, but she was too busy reveling in her supposed superiority to notice. Lisa smirked, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Finally, some common sense. Maybe then you'd be worth something." Emily shifted uncomfortably beside him, clearly torn between defending her husband and avoiding an all-out family argument. But Cassid wasn't upset. He was just waiting for the perfect moment when the truth would come crashing down on Lisa like an unforgiving storm. He already knew she was scheduled for an interview at his company the next day. And when she walked into that office, expecting to meet some unknown CEO, she would instead come face to face with the useless brother-in-law she had spent years belittling. Cassid leaned back into the couch, a knowing smirk tugging at his lips. This was going to be fun. The next morning, Cassid sat at the breakfast table, stirring his coffee as Lisa prattled on about her upcoming job interview. She was practically glowing with excitement, her usual smugness dialed up to maximum levels. "I can't wait for this interview," Lisa said, taking a bite of her toast. "This company is top tier, and if I land this job, I'll finally be in the position I deserve. Unlike some people who just sit around all day doing nothing." She shot Cassid a pointed look before laughing under her breath. Emily sighed. "Lisa, that's enough." Lisa waved her off. "Oh, come on, Em. I'm just saying, a man should be out there working, providing, not sitting at home leeching off his wife." Cassid merely smiled, taking a sip of his coffee. "And what position are you applying for, Lisa?" he asked, his voice casual. "Senior marketing executive," she announced proudly. "They're offering a killer salary. And with my experience, I doubt anyone else has a shot." Cassid bit back a smirk. Lisa's experience consisted of hopping from one job to another, burning bridges wherever she went. She was good at talking herself up, but terrible at keeping a steady job. Yet, here she was, completely oblivious to the fact that she was about to walk into his office. Emily glanced at Cassid, a knowing look in her eyes. She wasn't stupid, she knew Cassid had money. She knew he had a business. But she had never pried into the details, and Cassid had always preferred keeping his work and personal life separate. So, while she had an idea that he wasn't just some jobless bum, even she had no clue just how powerful her husband really was. Lisa, on the other hand, had always assumed the worst. And Cassid had let her. "Well," Cassid said, setting his cup down, "good luck on your interview." Lisa smirked. "I don't need luck. I'm just better than most people." Cassid simply nodded, his smirk widening. "This is going to be interesting." Lisa strutted into the grand office building, confidence radiating off her like perfume. The sleek glass doors reflected the sunlight, and the massive lobby buzzed with employees hurrying to and from meetings. She approached the receptionist, head held high. "Lisa Carter, here for the senior marketing executive interview," she announced. The receptionist smiled politely and gestured to the seating area. Please have a seat. The CEO will see you shortly. Lisa took a deep breath, smoothing her skirt. CEO? She thought. They're not making me go through a middle manager first? I must be a top candidate already. She sat back, crossing her legs, waiting. Minutes passed and finally, the receptionist looked up. The CEO is ready for you now. Please head through those doors. Lisa grinned. This is it. She stepped forward, back straight, heels clicking against the polished floor. As she entered the office, she opened her mouth, ready to impress. And then she froze. Sitting behind the massive mahogany desk, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, was Cassid, her jobless brother-in-law. Her jaw went slack, her confidence evaporating as if someone had poured ice water over her head. Cassid leaned back in his chair, clasping his hands together. Lisa, he greeted smoothly. Welcome to the interview. Lisa blinked, her face draining of color. You're the CEO. Her voice wavered. Cassid tilted his head. That a problem? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her usual sharp tongue seemed to have abandoned her entirely. Oh no, please continue, Cassid said, gesturing for her to take a seat. I'd love to hear about how useless I am. Lisa hesitated, then sat down stiffly, her posture no longer exuding the confidence she had walked in with. Cassid, I didn't know that I run this company? He leaned forward, his smirk never faltering. That's interesting. You never bothered to ask, did you? Lisa swallowed hard, glancing around as if looking for an escape. I just assumed. You assumed I was nothing. A burden, Cassid interrupted. That must be awkward now, huh? Lisa let out a nervous laugh, playing with the hem of her blazer. Look, Cassid, maybe I misjudged you. Oh, you definitely misjudged me, Cassid cut in, his voice cool. He could see the panic in Lisa's eyes, the realization that she had completely humiliated herself in front of the one person who now held her career in his hands. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Lisa, for the first time, looked small. Cassid let the moment linger before finally speaking again. So, Lisa, he said, picking up her resume from the desk. Let's talk about why you think you're qualified for this job. Lisa let out a shaky breath, forcing a smile. Of course. I have years of experience in marketing. Cassid hummed, flipping through her resume. Yes, I see that. But you've changed jobs quite a bit. In fact, it looks like you never stayed in one place for longer than a year. Lisa fidgeted. Well, you know how companies are these days. They don't appreciate talent. Cassid raised an eyebrow. Or maybe you just don't work well with others. Lisa's fake smile faltered. Cassid leaned back, tapping the papers against the desk. Lisa, I don't make hiring decisions based on personal history. I look at work ethic, integrity, and how well someone fits in with my company's values. Lisa nodded quickly, latching onto the idea that she still had a chance. But, Cassid continued, I do have a problem with employees who belittle others, who talk down to people based on assumptions, and who have a habit of looking down on the very people they should be respecting. Lisa's face burned red. She knew there was no saving this. Let me make this easy for you, Cassid said, standing up. I don't think you're the right fit for this company. I could have let you go through the process, let you embarrass yourself in front of the entire hiring team. But I'm not that cruel. Lisa stood quickly. Cassid, please. This interview is over, Cassid said, his tone final. Lisa's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. After a long, tense moment, she turned and walked toward the door, her shoulders slumped. Cassid watched her go, satisfaction settling deep in his chest. For years, Lisa had belittled him, dismissed him as nothing. And now, she had to walk away knowing that the very person she had insulted held the power to decide her future, and he had chosen to teach her a lesson she would never forget. Lisa stormed out of Cassid's office, her mind a whirlwind of humiliation, rage, and disbelief. She had walked in with the expectation of securing a high-paying job and walked out realizing she had just made a fool of herself in front of the very man she had spent years belittling. The humiliation clawed at her insides like a burning ember. Cassid, on the other hand, leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. He had expected Lisa to be stunned, but watching her crumble in real time had been more satisfying than he anticipated. He wasn't a vengeful man, but after years of enduring her scathing remarks, this moment felt like justice. However, something about the way she had left unsettled him. Lisa wasn't the type to simply accept defeat. She was prideful, manipulative, and, worst of all, relentless. Lisa sat in her car gripping the steering wheel, her pulse pounding with a mixture of anger and desperation. She couldn't accept what had just happened. She needed this job. She had already boasted to her friends, made promises to herself that this was going to be her golden opportunity. And Cassid, her jobless brother-in-law, had taken it away from her. Her hands shook as she unlocked her phone and dialed Emily. "You will not believe what just happened," she hissed as soon as her sister picked up. "Lisa, what's wrong?" Emily asked, concern lacing her voice. "It's Cassid. He's the CEO of the company I just interviewed for." Lisa blurted, still trying to process the absurdity of it. There was a long pause. Then, Emily sighed. "Lisa, I already knew that." Lisa nearly choked. "You knew?" "Of course I did. Cassid owns one of the most successful companies in the industry. He just never bragged about it because, unlike you, he doesn't feel the need to shove his success in people's faces," Emily said sharply. Lisa clenched her jaw. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't my information to share," Emily snapped. "And maybe if you weren't so busy insulting him all the time, you would have learned it yourself." Lisa's grip tightened on her phone. "He humiliated me, Em. He led me on and made me think I had a chance, only to throw it in my face." "No, Lisa," Emily said, her voice firm. "You did that to yourself." Lisa's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You've treated him terribly for years, and he still gave you a fair interview," Emily continued. "That's more than you deserved." Lisa's face burned. This was not how this conversation was supposed to go. Emily was supposed to take her side, not defend Cassid. "Well," Lisa said bitterly, "he's going to regret embarrassing me." Emily's voice grew cold. "What are you planning?" Lisa hung up without answering. Cassid had barely made it home that evening when Emily confronted him. "Did you really have to humiliate her?" she asked, arms crossed as she leaned against the doorway of their bedroom. Cassid sighed, setting his briefcase down. "I didn't humiliate her, Em. I gave her an interview just like everyone else." "But you knew she wouldn't get the job," Emily argued. Cassid shrugged. "That's not my fault. Her resume was weak, her attitude was worse, and let's not forget, she has a history of burning bridges. Why would I hire someone like that?" Emily let out a frustrated sigh, rubbing her temples. "I just don't want this to turn into some family war, Cassid. You know how Lisa gets." Cassid walked over and wrapped his arms around her, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I know, but she needed to learn a lesson. And honestly, I think it's about time she faced some consequences for the way she treats people." Emily softened slightly but still looked unconvinced. "Just be careful, okay?" Cassid nodded, but deep down, he had a feeling Lisa wasn't done. And he was right. Over the next few days, Cassid started noticing strange murmurs in his office. Employees whispering in the break room. Suspicious glances thrown in his direction. A few pointed stares from the executive board members. Something was off. Then, his assistant, Daniel, walked in looking concerned. "Sir, we have a problem." Cassid frowned. "What is it?" Daniel hesitated before sliding a tablet across the desk. "You should see this." Cassid picked it up and immediately felt his stomach turn. Social media was buzzing with rumors about him. Posts were popping up about a corrupt CEO, about a nepotism scandal, about Cassid allegedly hiring unqualified family members while denying hardworking candidates their rightful opportunities. Cassid's grip on the tablet tightened. He knew exactly where this was coming from. Lisa. She was trying to ruin his reputation. Cassid wasted no time. That evening, he drove straight to Lisa's apartment. She opened the door with a smug smile, arms crossed. "Cassid, what a surprise." Cut the act, Lisa, Cassid said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I know you're behind the rumors. Lisa feigned innocence. Rumors? Oh, you mean the truth about how you unfairly rejected a qualified candidate just because she was your sister-in-law. Cassid exhaled sharply, barely containing his frustration. You are not qualified, Lisa. Your work history is a disaster. Your attitude is even worse. I didn't hire you because you don't deserve the job. End of story. Lisa scoffed. That's your opinion. But the public? They love a scandal. Cassid narrowed his eyes. You really think this is going to work? Lisa smirked. I think people want to believe the worst about CEOs like you. And I think that once your company starts losing trust, your precious business will start crumbling. Cassid took a step closer, his voice dangerously low. You don't scare me, Lisa. You should be, she taunted. Because this is just the beginning. Cassid held her gaze, his mind racing. He had underestimated just how far Lisa was willing to go. She wasn't just angry, she was out for blood. And now, he had to figure out how to stop her before she destroyed everything he had built. Cassid stood in his office, watching the city lights twinkle beyond the massive glass windows. The weight of the situation pressed down on him like an iron chain. Lisa had launched an all-out smear campaign against him, and while he knew the truth, the public only saw the lies she was feeding them. The rumors were growing, spreading like wildfire. Investors were hesitant. Employees were murmuring. And now, the board of directors had called for an emergency meeting. Lisa wanted a war. Fine. She was about to find out that he never lost. The board meeting room was silent, tension thick as the executives sat around the polished oak table. The CEO's seat, his seat, stood at the head, waiting for him to take control. Cassid walked in, his confidence unwavering. He could feel the judgment in the air, the questioning glances from some of the members who had begun to doubt him. One of the senior board members, Mr. Grayson, cleared his throat. Cassid, we've all seen the allegations circulating about you. We need to address them before our investors pull out. Cassid nodded, taking a seat. I understand the concern. But let me make one thing clear, these are lies. Fabrications created by someone with a personal vendetta against me. Another board member, Ms. Holloway, interlocked her fingers. You're saying there's no truth to these accusations? That you've never engaged in nepotism? Cassid smirked. Actually, I'd like to prove my integrity. I have someone who can shed light on the real story. The doors to the boardroom opened, and in walked Lisa. Her face immediately paled. The board members turned in confusion as Cassid leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Lisa's. Have a seat, Lisa. Lisa hesitated, glancing at the executives, then back at Cassid. She knew she had no way out. Slowly, she sat down. Cassid slid a folder toward her. Since you're so concerned about integrity, why don't we go over your work history? Lisa swallowed hard. He continued, his voice calm but firm. Multiple firings due to unprofessional behavior. Terminated from your last position after being caught spreading false information about your manager. A history of short-lived jobs because you were never able to maintain professionalism. Would you like me to keep going? Lisa clenched her fists, her confidence cracking. That doesn't change the fact that you denied me a job because I'm family. Cassid chuckled, shaking his head. I denied you a job because you aren't qualified. And the best part? I recorded your interview. Would the board like to hear how you spoke about my company before you even knew I was the CEO? Lisa's face drained of color. Cassid turned toward the executives. Lisa has been spreading these rumors because I refuse to let nepotism cloud my business. If I had given her the job, that would have been corruption. The board members exchanged looks. Some nodded in understanding. Lisa's nails dug into her palms. She was cornered, and she knew it. Cassid delivered the final blow. Lisa, if you ever attempt to smear my name or my company again, I will sue you for defamation. And trust me, you won't win. The silence was deafening. Lisa's bravado crumbled, her lips pressing together in a thin line. She had lost. She stood abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. Without another word, she stormed out of the room. Cassid turned back to the board. I built this company on merit, not favors. And I won't let baseless lies shake what we've created here. Mr. Grayson nodded. That's all we needed to hear, Cass said. We stand by you. As the meeting concluded, Cassid finally let out a slow breath. The storm had passed. Lisa had tried to ruin him. Instead, she had only proven that he was untouchable. Lisa's departure from the boardroom was as dramatic as her entrance had been, but this time, she had no audience to admire her bravado. The moment she left the building, the whispers in the office died down, replaced by an understanding Cassid had handled the situation with precision and grace. He had not only defended his integrity, but also reaffirmed his authority as the head of the company. Word of the meeting spread quickly, and soon, the narrative began to shift. Employees who had been hesitant about the rumors realized how baseless they were. Investors regained confidence in the company. The smear campaign Lisa had so carefully crafted collapsed under the weight of her own arrogance. But Cassid wasn't done yet. He had learned something valuable from this ordeal. Lisa was toxic, and as long as she remained in their lives, she would always find a way to inject her venom into their happiness. That evening, Cassid returned home to find Emily sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, her face tense with emotion. She had clearly been waiting for him. Lisa called me, she said as soon as he walked in. Cassid sighed, setting down his briefcase. Let me guess, she spun the story to make herself the victim? Emily exhaled sharply. She said you humiliated her in front of the board and ruined her reputation. Cassid let out a humorless chuckle. No, Lisa ruined her own reputation. I just exposed the truth. Emily rubbed her temples, visibly torn. Cassid, I know she's difficult. But she's still my sister. And I'm your husband, Cassid countered, his voice calm but firm. Emily, I have put up with her insults for years. I never fought back, never corrected her, because I didn't want to cause problems in our family. But she crossed a line. She tried to destroy me. Emily looked away, her expression conflicted. She's hurt, Cassid. She lashed out because she felt embarrassed. Cassid stepped forward, gently taking her hands in his. And what about me? Did she ever consider how I felt all those years she called me useless? Did she ever stop to think that maybe I deserved respect? Emily's eyes softened. She squeezed his hands. You're right. I know you are. And I'm sorry that I didn't stand up for you sooner. Cassid kissed her forehead. I don't need an apology. I just need you to see Lisa for who she truly is. And I need to know that she won't be a problem in our lives anymore. Emily nodded slowly. I'll talk to her. But Cassid, I think we both know she's never going to change. Cassid sighed. I know. And that's exactly why we need to set boundaries. A week later, Lisa attempted one final act of defiance. She posted a cryptic social media rant about backstabbing family members and betrayal. But the damage had already been done to her. No one took her seriously anymore. She had burned one too many bridges, and this time, there was no recovering. Cassid, on the other hand, focused on his business and his marriage. The situation had only strengthened his bond with Emily, and for the first time in years, he felt free from Lisa's toxic influence. One evening, as he and Emily sat on their porch watching the sunset, she turned to him with a small smile. You know, she said, for someone who Lisa called useless all those years, you sure handled that like a boss. Cassid chuckled, pulling her close. That's because I am the boss. Emily laughed, resting her head on his shoulder. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Lisa had tried to tear him down. Instead, she had only made him stronger. And that was the ultimate revenge. Lisa had always believed she was untouchable, that she could say and do whatever she pleased without consequence. But life had a way of humbling even the most arrogant. After her failed smear campaign, she found herself isolated. The job she had counted on was gone. Other companies in the industry caught wind of her behavior and hesitated to offer her a position. People she once considered friends distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with someone who had tried to destroy her own family. Meanwhile, Cassid continued to thrive. His company rebounded from the temporary scandal stronger than ever, and his reputation remained intact. His employees respected him even more, seeing how he had handled the situation with grace and intelligence. But more importantly, Cassid had learned a valuable lesson. Not everyone deserved a second chance. Lisa had been given opportunities to change, to treat him with respect, and to be a decent person. She had squandered them all. And now, she was reaping the consequences of her own actions. One day, Cassid received a text from an unknown number. It was Lisa. "I made a mistake. Can we talk?" Cassid stared at the message for a long moment before locking his phone and setting it aside. He had spent years trying to be the bigger person, trying to endure her cruelty. But now, he understood that some people never changed. Lisa would have to face the reality she created alone. He turned to Emily, who was watching him curiously. "Lisa," she guessed. Cassid nodded. "She wants to talk." Emily hesitated. "Are you going to?" Cassid smiled, shaking his head. "No. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way." Emily took his hand, squeezing it gently. "Proud of you." Cassid exhaled, feeling lighter than he had in years. Lisa had tried to break him. But in the end, she had only freed him. And that was the best revenge of all.